Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here on the afternoon sessions. My name is Nanda Kishore. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Aitomatic, and I'm going to be moderating the afternoon sessions today here in this room. So I'm going to start off by actually introducing the first speaker. This is Dr. Roshan Nanu. He's actually the head of product engineering here at Aitomatic currently, and very eclectic background in the past. He's a freshly minted PhD from Brandeis in neuroscience, and before that he actually did his undergrad at Caltech here in Pasadena in physics and information theory. And what I find really interesting about him is he just brings this very eclectic background, one from the hard sciences like physics, along with sort of like really understanding how the brain works and modeling all that, and I think it's been super.
Can you do better? I'll switch batteries. It's probably dead.
I guess we'll use this. We'll use this one. So he's going to talk about some of the applications he's done using this combination of skills that he has. Roshan?
All right, thanks for the introduction, Nanda. Actually, this doesn't feel right. So, what would you rather be working on? I think Chetan Gupta ended with that question, and I really liked it. I mean, that meant a lot to me, because 15 years ago, what I would rather be working on was I wanted to change the world by working on teleportation. That's why I went into physics. 10 years ago, I wanted to change the world by working on diseases, mental disorders. 5 years ago, I wanted to change the world by understanding learning and memory and changing the way in which we interact with the world. And 1 year ago, I started actually changing the world by working on AI for fishing. I didn't think that would be the case. But it turns out, over the past 20 years, the amount of fish consumed in the world has doubled. And in the next 20 years, it's expected to double again. This far exceeds the population growth. Just the demand for fish is increasing. More and more people like sushi. And that just happens to be the case. It's a pretty good food source. But this puts a huge strain on the fishing industry. Right? Boats have to go out and they can only catch so many fish per day. Unfortunately, that strain on the fishing industry is having a huge impact on the environment. Because the fishing industry, industrial fishing, is employing some pretty harsh methods to collect the quantity of fish they need right now to serve the ever-growing demand. Right? With methods like trawling, scooping up huge swaths of fish at once, where they, trawl through miles and miles of ocean, causing overfishing. They're just decimating populations of fish in regions. Moreover, these trawling nets run along the ground of the ocean floor, ripping up reefs, ripping up debris, picking up anything they kind of come across. And this is a huge issue because in addition to catching the fish that they're actually after, they're also catching the fish that they aren't after. They call it bycatch. And the amount of bycatch is immense. It includes species near extinction. It includes turtles. It includes life on the ocean floor. And it turns out that stuff's important. I mean, it helps keep our oceans oxygen-rich and life in them, which in turn helps keep our atmosphere oxygen-rich and life in them. And unfortunately, we are life that lives in our atmosphere. So really, going forward, I mean, the people who want fish aren't going to decrease. We need to find a more sustainable way to acquire this demand. And fixed net fishing is one of those sustainable ways. In fact, this is a method of fishing that's been around for hundreds of years. And it's very simple, the concept. It's, let's just put some nets in the ocean, not the wiry ones that'll like cut you, but just like some rope nets, and build a nice big enclosure, and fish will just kind of swim in on their own, and they'll congregate within this net. They'll group up in this area. They will, decide, some will swim out, some will migrate down to this area, making it a little harder for them to get out, and so on. And slowly you'll basically get a congregation of fish, and fishermen can come out and then scoop up those fish. Right? So they're not scraping huge swaths of the ocean. They're not decimating entire populations. They're decimating a piece of it that swims in here. And these fish can also get out. Now, for scale, this is miles long. These things are huge. And they're set up so that fishermen can go out there, fish, go back. The problem is, and the reason these aren't super popular, is because it's not profitable. You can't get the right quantities you need, and there's a cost to going out, right? You have to prep your boat with ice. You have to fill up on supplies. You have to sail a couple hours from shore. And if you get there, and there's no high-value fish in the net at that time, it's a wasted trip. So unfortunately, sustainable methods like this just aren't possible until AI. Yeah, I made this graphic myself. It's not, just numbers. The numbers aren't accurate, but the concept is there. But the idea is, with AI, they can install sensors inside these nets, ultrasonic sensors, and then use AI to actually tell fishermen who are still on shore what fish are in the net, how many of them, where they are. And that way, they only make that trip when they know it will be profitable. So now there's no overhead cost, because every time you go out there, you know you can make a huge profit. But AI is needed to do this, right? Cameras under the ocean covering that huge area is not feasible. Not if we want to start putting these everywhere. But, a few ultrasonic sensors, that's great. Except there's some barriers there. And that has to do with the type of data. So this is an echogram. If you've ever seen it, this is a heat map under the ocean and in one of those nets, actually. And you can tell just looking at this. Can any of you tell what fish are in this picture? Or even what are fish in this picture? Exactly. Now, trying to identify fish in here requires AI. But there's a lot of issues with this data and a lot of barriers to traditional ML. The biggest one being the amount of data, right? This is noisy data, it's sparse data. If you want to train, say, a computer vision algorithm to look at this and figure out where all the fish are and what type of fish they are, you need millions of images, right? This is effectively training something like YOLO v5 from scratch. But we can't get millions of images of ground truth data. In fact, the only time we have ground truth data is right after fishermen pull in a catch, and they can see what fish they caught, and they can go to the image right before they caught them, and label that with the ground truth. So at most you get a few hundred images tagged in, say, a week. So it'll take years and years to get enough data to train a traditional AI system to look at this and give you accurate predictions. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means there's something else we need. We need fishermen, right? We've been fishing since, people had sharpened sticks. And fishermen have passed down their knowledge for generations. They have passed down information about where fish will congregate, what type of fish will be there. They know, what weather conditions to go out in. Right before it rains, you get a bunch of mackerel. Who knows? But they know these things. So even without AI, they can kind of tell where and when fish will appear and what kind of fish they can expect to find. The problem is they just don't know exactly when to go out to those nets. And that's what we're trying to recreate with AI. So why are we wasting all of this knowledge? Why are we waiting years when we've already waited hundreds of years? We've already collected data for hundreds of years. It's just stuck in these guys' heads. right? They know things. They know amberjack and bonito are primarily found in spring, right? They know various rules and information about how fish behave, how they group together. They can tell us the seasonality of fish. They can tell us what subspace to focus our models on at any given time of year or time of day or location. Right? They know the geospecificity of fish. Depending on where in Japan I go fishing, they can tell me what type of fish I'll find right then at that type of year. And I say that because I really want my boss to send me to Japan to go fishing. But we have all of this information. The challenge then comes in how do I get it into my AI systems? How can I use this so that I can build this software now and start people on a path to using this type of fishing now, rather than waiting 3 to 5 to 10 years. Right? So that's the challenge we undertook. And this is the solution we came up with. Now, let's just ignore all the small boxes for a second and just look at what this system is doing at the high level, right? First, we have our images, and they go into what is effectively your object detection algorithm. It spits out bounding boxes and fish classifications. And then that goes into just a secondary classification algorithm that takes that information and filters it. Now, if I was going just the traditional ML route, I'd stop right here. But the thing is, we had a few different types of knowledge, and the question became, how do we use them? So in our system, we employed 2 of our knowledge-first architectures that we have. We have our segmented world ensemble and our K-oracle, and I'll get to what those are in a second. And I'll start here at the first one. Right? Because the first type of information was what I was talking about earlier, seasonality, geospecificity, the when and the where, and the, what type of fish to look for and focus on. So we took that information and put it into a knowledge-based segmentation model. And what this does is, at the training step, it means I can take my small data set, and I'm actually going to carve it up into smaller data sets. And I'm going to train a specific model for that subspace. Right? I'm going to train a very specific model for Okinawa, one for spring in Okinawa at nighttime. And the reason we're doing this is that what AI is actually doing is it's looking at all of the data that it gets and figuring out all of the relationships, all of the trends, all of the statistics, and then giving us our answer. But it needs a ton of data to figure out all of those trends and statistics. Right? I need millions of images to look at one of those and decide, all right, you have bonito in here and sardines and mackerel and all the fish in the sea. But if I have an ML model that only has to concern itself with, where's the amberjack in this one tiny photo, then it'll do a much better job. So it needs less data to learn those trends because we're using the fisherman's knowledge of that information. And these can learn better. And actually, like Chetan said, when you ensemble a bunch of models together, the results are often better than just using one. So we ensemble all those predictions. And then we go to our next system, our next step. And that's our classification system, right? In addition to just that information that we have, we also have rules from our experts. We have, if the water temperature is this, you're not going to see this fish. So if my classifications return that fish, well, that's not true. And the way this is set up is this acts as a teacher model. Those rules that our fishermen gave us can teach an ML model how to generalize on that. Because while our experts only consider themselves with a few variables, our ML model can look at all of the variables, all of the data, the whole dimensionality of the space. So if it's just learning from the student or from the teacher, the student can generalize and it can become more accurate in places where the teacher might fail. And then from that, once again, it gets ensembled and sent to, you have your live fish detection prediction that your expert can then act on and decide whether or not to go fishing. So that's the basis of this system. And, what that enables is for me to provide this future. Right? AI can do so much more than create ads that are better targeted to me. AI can do so much more than create a chatbot that talks to me on WhatsApp and says that I could make millions if I just invest now in Bitcoin. Right? AI has the ability to make the sustainable options that we've been avoiding forever because they're not profitable. It has the ability to make them profitable. Right? And so, what would I rather be working on? I want to be working on making this a future. Right? A future where everyone's happy, where grandkids pass on their knowledge, or grandfathers pass on their knowledge to their grandkids. Hell, a future where grandkids pass on their knowledge to grandfathers. I'm sure with age you forget a few important things. But I've started realizing that we don't have to wait, because if we wait for data, then this can't happen, right? If we're always waiting for more data, then it's just going to take too long. It's going to be too late to actually have a meaningful impact. But we don't need to wait. People have been doing this for decades, for generations. The knowledge is there. I have a room full of physics textbooks. I have a different room full of neuroscience textbooks. Why do I need to collect more data? So that's all I have for you today.
Thanks, Doc.
Thanks, Dr. Nanu. We'll take a couple of questions if there are any.
Thank you, Roshan. Very inspiring talk, for sure, for all of us to learn from and gain insights. I did not understand the context of this work. Is this an academic project? Is this a client? Is this a project that Aitomatic is taking on? Can you provide more context behind this?
Yes, this is actually a client. So this work is in production. It's moving to there. And actually, for a bit more context, what they're actually hoping to do is not just grab the knowledge of one fisherman or two or 10. It's 150,000 fishermen. And they're kind of setting up a system to collect all of that knowledge and aggregate it and build these models for numerous fixed net installments. So right now, there's a handful, and they want to scale to across the nation, across the country. So this is live work.
And I might actually add that it's live work that our client has done with our technology. Of course, we helped them in the beginning, but...
And thank you much. Could you go into detail about how you created the data set for the knowledge-based segmentation portion you discussed?
Okay. Let's go right here. So the data set created for that was actually recorded from those fixed net installments. Those are images taken, actually images are being captured live, but after a catch, when the catch record is obtained, then some of those images are annotated using that catch record and using some object detection. They're corrected by humans, and then that data is pre-processed and just simply filtered and cleaned up. And then that's how we have that data set. There's not really much else to it.
Okay, but you're able to reduce the amount of images required because you have the fisherman labeled in?
So no, the part there is, so that's how we get the image data set. That's the annotated echogram data.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing we do is actually we have additional metadata. This is where those images are taken, when, weather information at that time, and things like that, just publicly available information. And then we have the information from our fishermen, which is telling us what features to focus on for segmentation, what groupings to make. So if a fisherman says, you're only going to find these 3 fish if you go fishing in these 2 months, then I can just make a segment that focuses just on those 2 months and only has those 3 fish types, and I train one submodel just for that. Right? Now we automated that process, so it takes that knowledge in a simple form, in a simple structured format, and they can put in more and more. And then it creates all of these segments and these models dynamically. And then that ensembling step actually applies quite a bit of logic to decide. So new data comes in, new metadata comes in. The segmenter will choose which models to feed that to. And then the ensemble will decide how to best combine those with a combination of confidence and with a combination of model specificity and accuracy.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dr. Nanu.
Okay.
Thanks for having me out.
Please don't forget to vote.